when I read the stories in the press about the school situation, the school testing, the unanimous vote by the school board to spend $125 million on rearranging schools and investing in the capital structure of that cartel, I think to myself, well, I'm just too optimistic about Chattanoogans and Hamilton Countyans. I have too much high hopes in them, and my long-term positive view is somewhat too cheerily infecting my short-term view, which should be pretty bleak and pretty negative. And so as I look kind of in the shorter constraint of time, more in the near term, I should have, well, my long-term optimism sort of infects my short-term negativism, okay, and makes that short-term negativism a little less than than it is. And the reason I'm thinking in the direction of how to assess the short term is that I don't see a lot of strength of character among people in Chattanooga, especially when the cartel continues to operate. We have stories about these test scores and mixed results, and then we have tax money being spent and bond money being spent, which is to say future tax revenues consumed now by the issuance of bonds, the bond holders bearing the risk for their delayed gratification in receiving payment. They give up their digital units of dollars, let us spend them now, and get paid back over time with interest. And so we have these commitments, and the story is the same, right? In a way, there's no sense that things can be any different. We're in a paradigm where public school is essential. We don't know really why public schools are here, but we do know that they are. And so public school, the state factory school, is normative, right? It's not bad, it's not good, it's just the way things are. And so we accept that state control of a very, very important segment of the marketplace, which should be a free marketplace, but it is not really free because most of the capital in that market is consumed by the state, and the benefits of public schools doled out to needy families of about 43,000 children in this southeast Tennessee county, the major county in the region with the biggest population, the most wealth, perhaps the greatest future prospect, and yet we do not have a free market in education. The marketplace in education should be free because, after all, education is about ideas, it's about morals. And do we want to have children in the future who do believe in morals and do believe in liberty and make use of freedom? Or do we want to have students who come from the state system, right? This is a state system, just like in Bulgaria, just like in the Soviet Union, just like in China, in Germany. You have state systems, and those state systems always serve what? Whom do they serve? What do they serve? They serve the state and that entire world and worldview, which is the government is at the center, and all things that would assail it are somehow to be marginalized. All criticisms of government, all doubts about government, they're wrong, they're suspicious. You should be wary of them. And you should understand that what we have now is the way it is, and because it is the way it is, this system, this cartel in the marketplace, sitting on top of the marketplace, is normative. It is the way it should be, and that is because it is the way it is. And this is David Tulis, and I do thank you for giving me just a minute of your time. There is, in a way, not a will to succeed in Chattanooga. If people were interested in personal success and in the success of their children, they would revolt. They would say, we simply can't have state government telling us what to do in the rearing of our children, in the training of their hearts and minds, in the consuming through the compulsory attendance statute 8 hours of their day and 180 days of the year, which is, I think, the level of schooling required to meet muster under that statute. We should be in revolt. We have all kinds of means to think in terms of revolting against that system. We have all kinds of success stories of parties outside that system. And yet, because we are afraid in Hamilton County and Chattanooga, because we live in a kind of fear, we dare not disturb the tranquil operations of bureaucracies and boards and administrative bodies and taxing bodies and oversight bodies from the federal government, grant writing nonprofit organizations, and others, a whole host of companies and providers and textbook sellers and software consultants and others who make sure that there is compliance with Title 8 and Title 9 and Title 10 and all the titles. There are all kinds of people who are bean counters and compliance officers in that system, the largest employer in Chattanooga, I think. And because they're all there busy working, there's simply nothing we can do. We are made inert by our surroundings, and our ideas also are trapped. And the fact that we have a centralized schooling system, right? You can have education, and I'd say that education is really not a system. Education systems seem to be a kind of contradiction in terms, because education is something, if properly understood, starts at the individual, right? There's an individual who, let's say the parent, the mom or dad, and then the student. That individual has distinct needs and distinct ideas and a unique past, and I would say a providentially ordained future, right? That's unique to him and to no one else. And how can that individual be best enriched while he's still at home and subject to his parents and they're dependent? How can he be enriched and trained to find his own genius, right? To find his own unique narrative, his unique story, and I would say his calling, right? The idea of calling is, of course, a Christian concept, because it implies a caller, right? There's the call, and it comes from someone, that would be God, and then the one called is the individual, right? He is subject, he's a creature, and just as the word creature implies the word creator, and one with a creature with a calling is a man made in God's image, or a woman made in God's image, and he has a duty to do certain things given to him to do, right? That's God's providence for that person. And you could say, well, from the person's perspective, leaving God out of it just for a moment, that's what that person is gifted to do, following his own interests and obeying circumstances or not, and pursuing his life, finally leaving home and making his way out into the world. And better that there be more people who are distinct and individual and odd, and maybe queer, not in the gay sense, but queer in the sense of being just having different perspectives, right? Better we have more of those kinds of people than fewer. However, the system, the school system, the social management system that we've grown up with in the United States really doesn't want that. And it is a problem for there to be too many distinct individuals, each with his own plan, each with his own ideas, because that means that the industrial machine, the commercial machine of our country, which made it great, cannot prosper as securely as if everyone were the same, right? If people are all alike, more or less, then there can be certainty in return on investment, in return on capital. And this analysis is not, of course, original to me. I simply read about it in noted authors such as John Taylor Gatto, who is one of my favorite writers. I have his books on my near shelf in my very cluttered office. I have his books right there at hand. I have to kind of reach over a table where I have a stack of law books that's about to fall over. But if I go past that to the shelf on the wall where the door is, and I keep my keys and my billfold and my glasses and my press badge, there on that shelf is my near at hand shelf, and there John Taylor Gatto's books are. And he's a Roman Catholic. He's a free market defender, and he's a rationalist, and he in the end is a humanist. But in spite of these parts of his background, he is nonetheless a unique analyst. And one book, for example, that I'm holding up for you on YouTube is Weapons of Mass Instruction. And it goes on to say, a school teacher's journey through the dark world of compulsory schooling. And sometimes, as I think, well, the listener wants to hear what the free market take is, the David Tulis take is on the school story, which is on the front page of the paper today on two counts. There's the infrastructure outlays and the testing story. What do we need to think about in these matters? So I don't need to rehearse Rosanna Hughes' story, for example, in the Chattanooga Times Free Press. You can read that for yourself. But what is the larger perspective, and where are we here? What are we supposed to think of this? How can we sort of detach ourselves from what are mainstream media reports? And you can't. When I say MSM, I'm not faulting anybody at the Times Free Press or anybody at TV3 or TV9 or CBS News, which is our platform. I'm not faulting anybody. I'm just saying when these are narratives that don't have to ask the question, right? The writers of those pieces are not charged with the burden of putting it all in context, right? That's not the job of that writer. And so what you're going to get, though, is a kind of a drumbeat series of stories every day in coverage of the school system here in Hamilton County. And if the larger questions are rarely asked, even by Pam Sohn or Clint Cooper, the editorial writers, they don't ask the large questions, and that's not their job either, right? They really can't. That's kind of too big a job, and that's they have the press of deadlines. You can see how little those two editorial writers write. That their time in the newsroom up there is taken up with all kinds of other things, no doubt meetings and who knows what else. But there's not a lot of output up there in the editorial department of the newspaper. So they're busy people, and to give the long-term analysis, which takes a certain liberty to do that. They don't have that liberty. They don't have that time. So don't criticize them for not giving you a true analysis and perspective. You're not going to get perspective from an editorial writer, with occasional exceptions, of course, from those two noted writers here in Chattanooga. They're not the leading three, though, by the way, who give the opinion in the newspaper. But who are the leading three? Well, Dave Flessner is probably the leading journalist in Chattanooga. He is the business editor at the newspaper. He can write about anything. He's omnicompetent on every subject, knows everybody, and has remarkable depth. Judy Walton, who doesn't do enough writing, just by the way, she's underutilized by Walter Hussman, the owner of Waco Media and the owner of the Chattanooga Times Free Press out over in Little Rock. He's not using her enough. She's probably number two in judgment and sagacity. And who's number three? You want to take a vote? Okay, the number is 800-8949, 800-8949, 800-8949, the David Tulis Show. The number three, I'd say, probably is David Carroll. Again, 30 years in Chattanooga, recently celebrating 30 years at TV3, and a remarkable man, a great depth of knowledge, highly respected, and not daring, but he's very knowledgeable, very wise, and he's always in the middle of the road. He has a good analysis, and you can make use of what he reports on. And but these outlets can't really tell you what you need to be thinking and how you need to be thinking and how broadly you need to be going in your endeavors to understand your situation here in Chattanooga and to kind of get past it. There are, and when I say, it sounds like I'm criticizing public schools. Okay, it sounds like I'm criticizing the cartel. And yes, you should be a doubter too. You should be a skeptic, an agnostic as well. I'm a great agnostic when it comes to that form of religion. But when I've been yesterday I was picking up my son from his tutorial, the last son at home, and I was sitting in the car for a few minutes, and I said, well, I think I need to write a column. And the column is about, and so I sat there as a little breeze came through the open windows, and there were some other people waiting, moms and dads waiting to get their children out of the tutorial. It's called Hilger Higher Learning, where the homeschoolers go to school, right? And Eddie Hilger and his wife Carly, Covenant College graduates, have run that school for 15 years or so, serving the homeschool market, all free market, right? All free market. And the column I drafted was about a lack in the free market sector on how to think about liberty. And it's a column about that's going to go into a homeschool newsletter about the Worth County raid on high school, where 900 students were lined up against a wall and roughly panted down. The sheriff has been indicted for breach of his oath, and a civil case has been filed for sexual assault by the officers of young women and boys, where the officers were touching their privates. and a kind of sexual harassment for an unwarranted drug, an illegal, unlawful, unwarranted drug search of the whole body, student body. And I complain. Why were there no heroes in the boxing team or the wrestling team, the football team, to say to the officer, get your hands off that girl? No report of that event indicated that a male student would defend the honor and integrity and virtue of a female student, which is what of course a gentleman does, no matter that he's going to be in trouble for it. How is it that the male instinct of preservation of others, namely females, the weaker sex, not one man, not one heroic football player turned around and said, cop, you get your hands off that girl. You leave her alone. You've got no authority to touch her. Show me your warrant. No one asked that question, not a single person, according to reports. Well, of course, the media is silent on that, so you don't really know. But I think that there was not a reporting of that. So I assume that it didn't happen. That could be that could be a mistake, though. But even in the homeschool sector, where you think there's an interest in liberty, there is not a strong sense of rule of interest in these topics. And I say that having been for some years here in Chattanooga, been the kind of the noisy constitutionalist, the one who writes about constitutional liberties and prosperity, uniting them together as a single concept, right? If you have liberty, biblical liberty under God, and protected by the Constitution, you are going to be a prosperous society. That's what I want to have for myself, and that's what I would like to have for you, my listener. How to achieve that? How do we all want that? And though we may not be able to achieve it, maybe we aren't going to be Mirandized at traffic stops and so on, things that are lax and things that are problems. We have the unmarked car story where police are chasing after people to make transportation stops on the highway. And I think it's without author. There's no legal basis for that. There's no authorization to stop people on the street, on the highway, without being in a car clearly marked for public service. So there's a fright danger, a tort danger there, and also it seems to be actions, ultra vires actions outside the scope of the law. But anyway, we have things that we complain about that are not solved yet. Well, I guess the question is, what do we deserve? And I think we deserve a lot of what we have because people in the free market sector are not training themselves for independent thinking and for strong, vigorous constitutional thinking. I was at an event yesterday, the reception for Jim Hammond, the sheriff, and I went there with my red calendar in hand to make contacts for people to interview. I wanted to see whom I wanted to interview among the Republican and conservatives and local political bigwiggery, and met a few folks whom I will approach for appointments so I can ask them some questions on your behalf. And one man spoke with me very favorably about the Constitution and so on, but he supported an unconstitutional city ordinance, and he was expounding the charm and necessity of the Constitution, and he was very excited about the Constitution, having heard a speaker in our area recently discuss it, and somehow it just seemed kind of off-putting that I would bring up the fact that the ordinance that he supported, the Airbnb ordinance, is flatly unconstitutional and should be challenged. And so somehow you can be for the Constitution but vote for an unconstitutional act, even though it's been explained to you in detail why it's wrong and why the act can't stand, right? So we have a kind of a disconnect. And what about in that free market sector I'm talking about, the homeschool sector, the free school sector? Is there enough interest in the marketplace? Is there enough interest in prosperity and liberty to teach children about that? And I think not. I think that there's just a great lack in the homeschool sector, which I'd say is the leading sector, right? Because these people, after all, are not in the public school, right? They have made their break. They have seceded, just as Catalonia is now trying to secede from Spain. The two of the leaders arrested, and a proposal has gone out that this morning that Catalonians draw their money out of Santander and four other major banks that have slighted the independence movement. We are here in Chattanooga. My name is David Tulis, and what can we do to fight back? What can we do to not so much fighting back, but as in going around, bypassing these systems? there is this seeming lack of will, and we can see it in the fact that school investment stories, school testing stories are just routine. They just come and go, and there's not any way we can break apart from them. I do have an antidote to that, and I want to make mention of it. But first, we've got some important messages. This is David Tulis, and you need to hear these messages. My sponsors are your sponsors, right? So support Free Market Radio, David Tulis, Nooga Radio. We are 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD FM. David Tulis, Nooga Radio. David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.